In 1993, Robin Williams put on a latex mask, a floral dress, and a Scottish accent, and somehow made one of the most emotionally honest films about divorce that Hollywood had ever produced. Mrs. Doubtfire wasn't supposed to be that. It was supposed to be a comedy, but behind the frosting, the prosthetics, and nearly 2 million feet of film, the real story is stranger and considerably more moving than anything that made it to the screen. Today, 15 facts about Mrs. Doubtfire, from the melting cake accident that became the film's most quoted moment, to a studio that tried to rewrite the ending, to the reason Robin Williams shut down production completely one afternoon. Stick around for the bonus. It involves a real woman in Edinburgh, a secondhand shop full of cats, and a name that traveled from Scotland to Hollywood without its owner ever knowing. Mrs. Doubtfire opened in November 1993 and became the second highest-grossing film of the year behind only Jurassic Park. Robin Williams as Daniel Hillard, the devoted but chaotic divorced father who disguises himself as a Scottish nanny to stay close to his children. Sally Field as his ex-wife. Pierce Brosnan as the man in between. It won the Academy Award for Best Makeup. It sparked real conversations about divorce law and fathers' rights, and it was built on more improvised footage than almost any film in Hollywood history. Fact 1. Williams generated enough footage for 3 completely different films. Williams would deliver 3 or 4 takes exactly as written, sharp, professional, on cue. Once director Chris Columbus had the safe version, he opened the floor. Williams then created brand new jokes, voices, and reactions in every subsequent take. Columbus ran 4 cameras simultaneously to capture whatever happened. Some scenes went through 15 to 22 takes, not because anyone was making mistakes, but because Williams refused to stop until he had exhausted every idea. The result was enough footage for 3 complete cuts, a PG version, a PG-13 version, and a more adult-rated cut, all of it preserved in climate-controlled archives. Nearly 2 million feet of film for one comedy, in the era when film stock was expensive. Fact 2. The melting mask scene was a total accident. The script called for Daniel to shove his face into a cake to conceal the missing prosthetic mask. Under studio lights, the frosting started melting faster than anyone anticipated, sliding down Williams's face, turning a quick gag into a slow-motion disaster. Then a blob of icing dropped directly into the social worker's tea. Williams didn't blink. Still in character, he had libbed. "There you go. You've got your cream and sugar now." The line wasn't scripted. Columbus kept the cameras rolling. That accidental, unrehearsed moment became one of the most quoted scenes in the film. Fact 3. Williams tested the disguise in the real world, including an adult store. Between shooting days, Williams walked around San Francisco in full costume to test whether the prosthetics would fool strangers. Nobody recognized him. His own son didn't identify his father until he heard his voice. Williams pushed further. He walked into an adult store fully in character. Wig, glasses, complete transformation, and attempted to purchase what he later described as a double-headed pleasure toy, maintaining the accent throughout. The clerk assisted politely without any suspicion. Williams eventually revealed himself. The clerk burst out laughing. Fact 4. The actress who played Lydia was expelled for being in the film. Lisa Jacob was 14 when she was cast as Lydia. She worked with a tutor on set and mailed completed assignments home while filming in California. When she returned to her Toronto school, she received a letter. She couldn't come back. Too many absences. Rules were rules. Williams wrote a passionate personal letter to the principal urging him to reconsider. The principal framed it and hung it in his office. Jacob was still not readmitted. She never went back. She later spoke about how painful it was to lose the ordinary texture of teenage life at exactly the moment the extraordinary version was happening. Fact 5. The opening cartoon was created by the man who invented Bugs Bunny. Columbus wanted something nostalgic and unexpected to open the film. He brought in Chuck Jones, the animator responsible for Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, and the Roadrunner. Jones assembled a team that included Eric Goldberg, who was simultaneously animating the genie in Aladdin, also voiced by Williams. The team produced nearly 5 minutes of footage, most of it cut. What survived establishes Daniel immediately. A man with strong morals and catastrophically poor judgment. 2 character truths in under 2 minutes of animation. Fact 6. Becoming Mrs. Doubtfire took 4.5 hours every day. 8 separate foam latex prosthetic pieces, layered onto Williams's face one at a time. Then padding, a full body suit, a wig, and multiple layers of stippled paint for realistic skin texture. To keep Williams occupied during hours of immobility, the crew installed a television on the ceiling above the makeup chair. The work won the Academy Award for Best Makeup in 1994. Williams sweated heavily, and every seam had to be perfectly sealed, or the latex would begin breaking down under studio lights. He described wearing the full costume as feeling like being trapped inside the world's largest condom. On hot days, it would begin to soften, turning the transformation into a race against temperature. Fact 7. The studio tried to rewrite the ending into a fairy tale. The original screenplay ended honestly. Daniel and Miranda remain divorced, learn to co-parent with maturity and genuine care for their children. The family doesn't reunite, it adapts. 20th Century Fox pushed for a traditional Hollywood reconciliation. Williams, Columbus, and Field, all divorced in real life, resisted firmly, sending children the message that divorce resolves itself if you wish hard enough. They felt both emotionally dishonest and potentially harmful. The studio briefly brought in another writer to reshape the ending. After sustained resistance from the creative team, they reversed course. The final scene, Mrs. Doubtfire speaking directly to children about different kinds of families, exists only because the filmmakers refused to let the film lie. Fact 8. Pierce Brosnan's character was originally the villain. In early drafts, Stu Dunmere was a schemer who wanted Daniel's children sent to boarding school so he could have Miranda to himself, an obvious, cartoonish antagonist. Columbus recognized the problem quickly. Mrs. Doubtfire was never about defeating a villain. It was about a flawed man confronting the consequences of his own choices. A cartoonish bad guy would have let Daniel off the hook entirely. Stu was completely rewritten, kind, patient, genuinely good with the children. In every way, the calm presence that Daniel's chaos made impossible. Daniel's jealousy wasn't driven by Stu's cruelty. It was driven by Stu's decency. One line survived from the original villain version, the poolside moment where Stu calls Daniel a loser. A single sharp edge left in an otherwise smooth performance. Enough improvised footage for 3 different films. A melting mask that nobody planned and everybody remembered. And a studio that tried to rewrite the ending into something the entire cast refused to accept. We're not halfway through. Still coming. The moment Williams shut down production so Sally Field could grieve. The casting alternatives that would have made a completely different film. And the bonus, a real woman in Edinburgh whose name traveled to Hollywood without her ever knowing it had left. Fact 9. Williams shut down production the day Sally Field's father died. While filming the custody courtroom sequence, Field received word that her father had died of a stroke. Despite the shock, she returned to set, determined not to disrupt production. Williams noticed immediately that something was wrong. When Field told him what had happened, he went directly to Columbus and stopped filming. The schedule was rearranged, so Field could leave and be with her family. No negotiation, no discussion. He just stopped the production. Field later described Williams as someone who noticed emotional shifts that others missed and then acted on them, rather than offering sympathy. Fact 10. The look was based on a 1940s photograph. Columbus's instruction was specific. The disguise could not look like a comedy costume. It had to look like a real grandmother, convincingly enough that children watching would genuinely believe in the character. The design team studied hundreds of vintage photographs and found their reference in a 1940s portrait of an older English woman, warm, proper, deeply lovable in expression. Every detail of Mrs. Doubtfire's appearance was reverse engineered from that single image. Many viewers, including children, forgot they were watching a man in heavy prosthetics. Fact 11. The cast could have looked completely different. The studio's preferred choice was Tim Allen, safe, conventional, likely to produce a competent family comedy rather than an emotional classic. The novel's author wanted Warren Beatty, which would have pushed the story toward a far more serious tone. Other names considered: Mel Gibson, Tom Hanks, Bill Murray, Chevy Chase. For Miranda, Columbus had initially wanted Catherine O'Hara. Kirstie Alley was offered the role but couldn't commit. Sally Field stepped in and provided the grounded counterbalance Williams required. And for the youngest daughter, Natalie, a young Blake Lively auditioned. Mara Wilson got the part. Fact 12. A sequel was years in development and died with Williams. Hollywood tried to make a Mrs. Doubtfire sequel for over a decade. The first serious attempt stalled by 2006. Williams admitted the approach hadn't worked, and neither he nor Columbus wanted to force a continuation without genuine heart behind it. In 2014, a new script finally excited both of them. Williams had one practical condition: less time in the prosthetic suit. The process had been exhausting in 1993. He was older now. He died in August 2014 before production could begin. The sequel was permanently shelved. Fact 13. The film sparked a real conversation about fathers' rights. The judge's line in the custody hearing, that proceedings had historically tended to favor mothers, landed differently for many viewers. It didn't feel like a plot point. It felt like a fact about their lives. Daniel wasn't a monster. He was impulsive and unstable, but visibly devoted to his children in a way the legal framework struggled to accommodate. That specific combination resonated with men who felt the system didn't adequately account for paternal involvement. Family law experts subsequently referenced the film in professional contexts, primarily as a cautionary tale about deception, but also as a reflection of genuine frustration that the legal system was beginning to address. Fact 14. Several scenes that would have deepened the film were cut for pace among the deleted scenes. Daniel apologizes to Stu directly, acknowledging the sabotage and jealousy, making explicit what the final cut only implies. Stu was never the problem. Daniel's own immaturity was the problem. Stu was simply the mirror. The decision to cut it was a production judgment. The film needed momentum, but the absence leaves a small gap in Daniel's arc. The version audiences saw is funnier and more propulsive. Whether it's more complete is a different question. Fact 15. The custody battle reflected a real shift in how the law understood fatherhood. In 1993, the historical presumption that mothers were the natural primary custodians was beginning to be formally challenged in courts and legislatures. Joint custody was newer than most people realized. Mrs. Doubtfire arrived in the middle of that renegotiation and took a clear position. A father's love is not a secondary consideration. The final scene, Mrs. Doubtfire speaking to camera about all the different kinds of families that exist, was not in the studio's preferred ending. It exists because the filmmakers fought for it. 30 years later, it's still shared by parents going through divorce and children who grew up watching it. Families don't have to look the way you expected to still be real. Bonus fact. And now, the bonus I've been saving for last. Anne Fine, the British author who wrote the novel alias Madame Doubtfire, lived near a famously eccentric Edinburgh shopkeeper named Annabel Courts, known locally as Madame Doubtfire. She ran a secondhand shop that locals described as chaotic and unforgettable, piled with cast-off clothing, inhabited by cats, presided over by a woman whose personality was as distinctive as her establishment. Fine passed the shop regularly. The woman's presence stayed with her. When Fine sat down to write a novel about a divorced father who disguises himself as a nanny, the name and spirit of Madame Doubtfire arrived naturally. The real Madame Doubtfire died in 1979. She never knew that the impression she had made on a neighbor would travel from a secondhand shop in Edinburgh to a Hollywood screenplay, to Robin Williams' face, to nearly 2 million feet of film, to the second highest grossing movie of 1993, to an Academy Award, to 30 years of being quoted in living rooms around the world. She sold secondhand clothing and kept cats and was locally famous in her neighborhood. And then, without knowing it, she became one of the most beloved characters in the history of American family film.